Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to The Landing. Welcome back to The Landing. For the month of June, we will be sharing selections from the oral history collection of the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. These interviews preserve the voices, memories, and experiences of coastal residents and are available online and at the museum for everyone to enjoy, learn from, and explore. Today, we are beginning with a powerful oral history interview recorded on November 19, 2016 by Susan West as part of the Carolina Coastal Voices in Harm's Way series. In this conversation, Susan speaks with Kenny Brite, an EMT and member of the Avon Volunteer Fire Department on Hatteras Island. Kenny reflects on the devastating impact of Hurricane Irene, which struck the Outer Banks in the fall of 2011, cutting off Hatteras Island from the mainland and leaving communities to face extraordinary challenges. He shares firsthand memories of the storm, the emergency response efforts, and the resilience of local residents during the long recovery process. Through Kenny's experiences, we gain a deeper understanding of what it means to live and serve in a coastal community where hurricanes are a part of life and where neighbors come together when disaster strikes. We hope you enjoy this important piece of North Carolina coastal history. Here is Miss Susan West's interview with Mr. Kenny Brite.
Well, it's November 19th, 2016. I'm Susan West, and I'm here today talking to Kenny Brite. Kenny, before we get started in talking about storms, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up?
Sure.
Okay.
Be glad to. I was born and raised in Elizabeth City, about 2 hours north of here. My brother had lived in Dare County, actually Hatteras Island, for a number of years, and I was down pretty regular visiting him. So in 1993, I decided to move to Avon and have been here ever since. I know the date. It was March the 17th because it was 4 days after the March 13th storm that I moved down. So I moved right into kind of a disaster.
That was a bad storm, wasn't it?
It was labeled as superstorm and storm of the century and such. I think we've had a few storms of the century since, but I think that one kind of started it. And I mean, it was the whole East Coast, and it got Hatteras too.
Okay. So, when you moved to Avon, what kind of work did you do when you first moved here?
Actually, a friend of the family purchased the Avon Fishing Pier, and he was going to put a restaurant in, and he actually did, called it the Pier Grill, and he asked me to come down and help get that started, and I did. We came down, we actually built the whole restaurant, mounted bar stools, mounted microwaves and everything, and during that time, I really enjoyed restaurant work, but when it came time to flipping cheeseburgers, I didn't really like the restaurant work so much. So I ventured out and started doing more house building and house type work. And then I got my electrical license in 95, and I started doing electrical work from there.
And is that what you do now for folks who don't know you?
Actually, I'm employed by Dare County EMS, and I'm a provider on the ambulance.
What does that mean?
I'm a paramedic for the county, and I work on the ambulance.
Okay. So how did you transition from construction and electrical work to being a paramedic?
Well, I was in the Hatteras Island Rescue Squad, and I was trained to first responder level, and it came across the pager that there was a subject on the beach bleeding in Avon at Greenwood Place, and I was across the street working on a house. And when I got there, I found the Russian couple who had been attacked by sharks. And, I come across there expecting somebody bleeding and ran into a little more than I was expecting. And actually the EMT class started the very next Tuesday. And I was undecided to that point whether I was going to take the EMT class or not. And after going to that and being just a little bit lost at the beginning, I decided to take it. And that's kind of where I started. I took the class at the high school with Miss Rita Dorr and got my basic, and then I got a job in February of 2004 with the county, and I've been with them since.
Okay. That must have been pretty shocking, though, to go across the dunes expecting, a relatively minor mishap on the beach and come across a couple who had been attacked by sharks.
Yes, ma'am. It was pretty brutal for them.
So you moved here right after one of our storms of the century. Have you experienced other storms since you've lived here?
Well, after they moved here in March, I got settled in. There were some trailers across from the Castaways Hotel. They called them the Konakai Villas, and I lived in one of those for several months, and promptly got introduced to hurricanes by Hurricane Emily. So that was August of '93. So I moved in March after the March 13th storm, and then came in. Emily came in after that in '93.
And did you have damage to your place?
14 inches of tide inside, yes, ma'am.
Oh, that is, yeah. So,
but I left for that storm, though. I wasn't as tied to the community in my first 6 months as I was even a year later. So I left for that. They said evacuate, and I said yes, sir. And I went back to Elizabeth City and then came back.
Okay.
So that was my first experience with storm damage personally.
Okay. Are there other storms that stick out in your mind as memorable?
Well, there's some storms and some storm issues, of course. In '94, Hurricane Danny came in, and Ocracoke had 19.9 inches of rain. I don't think we quite got that here. I think we were more in the 15 to 16 inch range here, but that type of rain on our island, as you know, just floods roads and fills the ditches and the creeks, and it seems to be getting some worse as more houses are being built, more areas being elevated, and there's less places for the water to go. Right. So the rainwater's becoming much more of an issue. Over the last 20 years that I've been here, it's become a lot worse.
Okay, so that was '94, Hurricane Danny.
99, excuse me. I apologize, that was 99.
Okay. I think that was the same year we had Hurricane Floyd, which didn't do a whole lot of damage here on Hatteras Island, but just inland, it was incredible amount of damage. So moving on from 1999, what other storms have left a mark on your memory?
Well, one more thing about the Danny storm and the Floyd. When Danny came through, it was pretty bad here. It blew. It was a hurricane. We could tell it. Everybody evacuated for Floyd a couple of weeks later, 10 or 12 days later, and they went to Rocky Mount in Greenville and just got whipped. I mean, Rocky Mount had areas of 20, 30, 40 feet of standing water, and people couldn't get back here, not because we were damaged, because it was kind of pretty here. It blew 15 to 20, which is kind of normal for us. And after that, we felt like we would have trouble getting people to evacuate because it's so hard for them to get back after they go out there and catch it. And we did see that. Fortunately, we didn't have any big storms for a while after that. I mean, in 2000, we had Helen, or Helene, however they said it, and we had 8 or 10 inches of rain, which, we can absorb that pretty well. Allison came in with 15 inches of rain, and then Gustav came in with 5 feet of surge. The surge is a different animal than the rain. They each have their issues, but the surge does a lot more damage. And that's when we really started or I personally started learning about surge, was at that point. And that wasn't...
But both can cause problems.
Yes, ma'am. And when you have both at the same time, the problem kind of grows exponentially.
Okay.
I mean, it just compounds with the rain and the surge.
Okay.
And we've had other storms. In '03, Fabian came in, and we didn't have a lot of wind and rain. But when we don't have that real threat coming in, we still have people on our beaches, and the rip currents were terrible and relentless. And there was many rescues. I would hate to guess a number, but there was dozens and dozens of water rescues because of the rip currents, and they were here for 10 or 12 days before and after the storm.
Okay.
So that was something else that if the storm doesn't actually hit here and they evacuate, then we have our guests back, and they're on the beaches still, and the rip currents get them.
Okay. And there's a lot of awareness about rip currents, but maybe not for all of our visitors, especially those who haven't been here before or aren't used to visiting ocean area.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do you remember all these storms?
There's usually a little something here or there in each storm that sticks out. It's hard to remember all the dates and all the names of all the storms, but there's a few. I mean, Emily sticks out. Isabel sticks out. Irene sticks out.
Okay.
Isabel
was
2003.
Okay.
And it put tremendous surge in Hatteras, but it came on shore and took the dune out. And they got the flooding from the ocean, which is kind of uncommon. Typically most of our damage comes from the sound, but it actually got through the dune and busted through there, and their road was washed out for almost 2 months. They were having to send their children to school by headboats. They would boat from Hatteras to Frisco, and then they would get off the boat at Scotch Bonnet, and the buses would pick them up there and take them to the school.
Well, during that period, how did that work? If someone in Hatteras Village had a medical emergency, how could you all get down there to help people?
Well, there was access by ferry.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a ferry from, I believe I'm right, Stumpy Point to Hatteras, and then they also had the Ocracoke route that was open.
Okay.
And they staged an ambulance and a crew down there, and they rotated crews in, kept a truck, and if they needed to get somebody out, if it was minor, they could boat them out, and if it was serious, they'd fly them out.
Okay. And then moving forward to Hurricane Irene. Now, that was 2011.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you chief of the Avon Volunteer Fire Department at that time?
No, ma'am. I was actually a captain in rank. The assistant chief was Jan Laskow, and the chief was and still is Sean Gray.
Okay.
But Sean is a ferry boat captain, and he had obligations with his work. And Jan had some family obligations, so the storm management kind of fell to me. And I was available, and I could do it, so...
Well, tell me about that. I mean, my impression is that here on Hatteras Island, the fire departments, the volunteer fire departments, play a really critical role in storm prep and recovery. Has that always been the case? And can you tell me exactly what the fire departments do?
I believe the fire departments have always been the center during a disaster. They have since I've been here, and I can't see it being any different prior to that. The recovery materials and supplies do come to the fire departments, and the fire departments disperse that.
Where do they come from, that material?
The county emergency management typically handles getting the materials, and they handle getting stuff to us, and then we distributed it.
So, and they're centered in Manio?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they send materials down in anticipation or after, or both?
We've become better at staging materials before the storm. We're getting better at that. It wasn't ever a real high priority, but we've had some serious storms closer together in the recent 10 years, as you know, and we have more people and we have more need.
Okay.
So, I mean, even just the local residents, the population has increased. So there's more needed, and we're pre-staging materials and supplies at the fire departments. And it's been our goal since Irene. We had a few things left over. We split them up between all the fire departments, so we have at least a few to get started with anything that we need.
And what are those supplies? What, like cleanup supplies, or?
A lot of supplies that come down are cleanup. The Red Cross sends kits which contain brooms, mops, degreaser, soap, gloves, bucket, sponge, and the United Methodist Committee on Relief, UMCOR, sends materials. Baptist Men send materials, and other relief agencies. Salvation Army sends materials. So all those materials come, and we try to give out all we can. If people need it, we want them to have it. But after Irene, there was a surplus. And so there was enough to where we could keep 25 or 30 kits at each fire station, and that's what we tried to do. Other supplies that we give out, toilet paper, paper towels. If people get flooded, they lose a lot of that kind of stuff, and that's stuff you kind of need today.
Yeah.
Tarps, bleach, fish boxes. That's a pretty good item, and they typically get a pallet to each station of 250 or 300 fish boxes.
Well, what do people use those for?
Well, if you take 16 inches of water in your house, all your bottom dresser drawers, the clothes are wet.
Okay.
So you open the drawers and you got somewhere to put it. If you can dry and save your dresser, good. But if you can't, you got somewhere to put it. And people always need somewhere to just box stuff up to get it out of the way so they can try to repair their homes.
For folks who weren't here during Hurricane Irene, give me a little idea of, okay, you see the forecast and everybody's pretty sure we're going to have some impact on Hatteras Island. And just tell me what your days leading up to and right after the hurricane went through, what your days were like. Were you at home in Avon, or what were you doing?
Well, I was still working full time with the county, so I had that obligation, and I just kept with that. And then we did things like we inventory our supplies so we know what we have on hand, and we try to do that at every station, every fire station. We check our propane to make sure we test our generators. We make sure we have fuel for generators, fuel up all the trucks, make sure everything's operational. One thing I did learn, that the water almost got into the Avon fire station. It was less than 7 or 8 inches from getting in there. And at one point, when it was about 12 inches down, we started moving mission critical paperwork and stuff from the floor of the fire department because we hadn't done that. We moved our portable generators on top of the fire trucks. We moved all our chainsaws and stuff up. If an axe takes tide, we'll hose it off and put it right back on there. But your chainsaw takes tide and things are bad. So we just started moving everything up, even our refrigeration. And that's one thing we did find after the storm, that we were quite lacking in refrigeration. We actually had a refrigerator and a freezer sent down by truck from Sears after the storm because we had so much food coming. We were out of power for 9 days. So
were you out of power at your house, your home?
I think the whole island was out of power for 9 days.
Okay.
The power company did a good job. They got the poles and lines fixed, but there were some issues, and they brought in big generators, and all that takes time,
Because I imagine that it was hard for the power company to access some of the areas further up the island that I don't know how they would have gotten there, actually, because there wasn't a highway left in some stretches.
Well, they have trucks capable of going through there. Not all of their trucks, but most of them are. Okay. But we were out of power for 9 days, so the first day people used the stuff in the refrigerator, restaurants included. But after day 3, everything starts stalling, especially for the restaurants. So we had protein coming at us all directions. We had thousands of pounds of shrimp. We had so many shrimp and not enough refrigerators, we had to throw shrimp away.
Because the restaurants are saying, I'm not going to have any customers, the food's going bad.
There's no power. Everything's stalling.
Okay.
So that's when we started saying we need refrigeration and freezers, and we got it coming. But the meals after the storm in Avon were legendary. People were eating flounder stuffed with crab meat, shrimp scampi. The soups were tremendous. We had
who was preparing the food?
Well, we had chefs from different restaurants that would come in and run the kitchen for the day. And how all that started was on Monday. The storm hit Saturday. Sunday, everybody's kind of getting back. And on Monday, Miss Denise Gaskins came and said, Kenny, we have to feed these people. I said, Miss Denise, I've got 7 guys. I mean, I don't know what to do. And she says, let me handle it. And I went, yes, ma'am, you can handle it. So she told me what she needed, and they came in and they fed the first night. That Monday night, they fed. And they fed 500 people.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And after that, Antoinette, her daughter, joined in the group and started scheduling people. And I mean, they had a schedule of their breakfast. These people are here. Lunch, these people are here. Dinner, these people are here. Had another list with what they needed food-wise.
So they had it organized just like if they were running a restaurant or a cafeteria or something.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And it came together from having nothing put together to well-oiled in less than a day and a half.
Amazing.
I don't know if they've done it before, but they seemed to know what they were doing. And all the fire department had to do was assist with, the stove if they needed the thing, make sure they had propane, we moved the ice, but they took care of everything. And all the restaurants started bringing them food. So coolers and refrigerators and freezers started getting full. And then she scheduled, Sonny Quidley came in and cooked one night. Forrest came in and cooked one night. Jomi and Seth came in and cooked one night. And they just started rotating. And some of them folks know how to cook. All of them did. And the food was just tremendous. The Salvation Army came in, not Monday, Tuesday. They came in Wednesday. And by Thursday, they were just assisting our guys and were in awe of how they had it set up and were working it.
Amazing. It really is. What else happened at the fire station during that period? You had the meals, you were handing out supplies.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that like the center for the village where folks went for information?
Absolutely. And information distribution was an issue for us.
Wow.
We didn't have a central location. Everything wasn't picked and put together and decided on. We have that now with the Radio Hatteras station and the fire departments. We have it. But on the Tuesday, they started feeding Monday night 500 people. On Tuesday at lunchtime, there was 300 people in there. I pulled out a chair. I stepped up on the chair and I told everybody. It's kind of like the news, kind of like the town crier. And then we set 3 different seatings for lunch. We could seat about 70 or 80 people at the time. So we gave the same information 3 times at every meal. And then we just went to their building and got a big piece of white tile board and just started. We had 4 by 8 sheets that we could write on. And it was kind of hectic because I had written it all pretty sloppily and as it came in. And Mandy Fuller came in one night and she says, do you mind if I straighten up that board? I said, what's wrong with it? And she said, well, that word's spelled wrong. I said, yes, ma'am, go ahead. So she actually organized the whole board, all the FEMA numbers, all the county numbers, all the state numbers, where to go for this, where to go for this. And we found that was quite helpful. We've actually still have the board. We still use it. We made 2 of them, and we've moved one to other departments as they need it also.
Yeah. Well, tell folks a little bit about the role of Radio Hatteras now. During Irene, we didn't have Radio Hatteras.
Yes, ma'am.
But I understand probably the original intent or mission of Radio Hatteras was to help with communication on the island, especially during times of emergencies. So what can Radio Hatteras do? How do they help?
Well, after Irene, someone would say, well, I heard this. And then somebody said, no, I heard this. And then somebody, I heard. And everybody has 3 different I heards for the same thing, and they're none of them quite the same. Radio Hatteras is the venue to get your information now. They collect and verify all information before broadcasting it. And then we're speaking with one voice to everyone. Okay. So everyone can turn here and get accurate information.
Fantastic.
And by verified, it's through a fire chief, fire assistant chief, or through a county official. Like if the fire chief says there's 2 feet of water on the road in Avon, they'll report it. If Uncle Jimmy calls and says there's 2 feet of Avon and water in Avon, they're going to call the fire chief, make sure there is, and then report it. Mm-hmm. So they have someone in each village that can actually verify information.
That's fantastic. That eliminates a lot of confusion and inaccurate information getting out.
Yeah, the rumor mill was pretty bad after Irene.
Was it?
Yes, ma'am.
And that, I'm sure, just adds to the stress.
Yes, ma'am.
So after Hurricane Irene, how long was the fire station in Avon, central hurricane recovery destination point for the village or for the community?
We fed for 10.5 days.
Whoa.
Power was out for 9. But we wanted to give everybody another day with the power on to clean out the refrigerator if they needed to make sure they had time to go get groceries if they needed to. We wanted to give them another day. After feeding 500 on Monday, we were running 1,500 people a day through the fire department.
Oh my goodness.
People from every village. And it stayed 1,500 people for 3 days, and then it started dwindling some. I guess people were, maybe getting their own stuff back together. A restaurant or 2 was able to get open. But, the last day, we still fed 600-700 people. Wow. So, we fed a lot of people. Wow. The fire department kept cleaning supplies out for another week and a half past that.
Okay.
So somebody we didn't necessarily have people there, but we had phone numbers on the door. If you need this, call one of these numbers and somebody will come get it for you.
And I imagine you all have a good sense of when you can decrease effort and all, when fewer folks are needing assistance or information.
Well, that comes with a good damage assessment immediately after the storm.
Who does that?
Well, we've gotten a lot better at that, too, since Hurricane Irene. After Hurricane Arthur hit, it was mostly up in Rodanthe, Waves, and Salvo. The Hatteras Island Community Emergency Response Team went up and did damage assessments.
Okay, let's backtrack and tell me about the Hatteras Island Community Emergency Response Team. That was not in organization mode during Hurricane Irene, correct?
It is a result of Hurricane Irene.
Well, why, or what is it, and why did that improve things?
After Hurricane Irene, we had a discussion of starting an auxiliary in Avon, a fire department auxiliary. It's been called Ladies Auxiliary in the past. It's not that anymore. It's anybody, Uh-huh. And we were going down that road, and then we said, well, we're probably going to need to start one in Rodanthe. And then, we might need to get one in Buxton, Frisco, or in Hatteras. So instead of starting an auxiliary for Avon, we thought that an island-wide auxiliary made more sense. And we looked for a few different venues to run that through, and CERT came to the top. It's a FEMA program. There's a state CERT coordinator, and there's some support for it, and training and other such. So the fall after Irene, it took about a year to organize. We ran 62 people through the program.
62 volunteers, and were they from all different places?
All different places. Every village was represented, some more than others, but all villages were represented. And they all sat through a 21-hour course.
Wow. So what was the course about? What did they have to learn?
There's different modules in the course. There's emergency first aid and triage. There's possibilities. There's a section on, what could happen if. There's a fire extinguisher course, there's first aid course, and there's different modules in it. But at the end of it, there's a hands-on demonstrate or participation, a group thing, where everybody pulls the pin on the fire extinguisher and puts fire out. Everybody splints a broken arm. Everybody assists with hand tools of lifting something heavy off somebody. Everybody participates in backboarding somebody. Everybody participates in command operations. So there's a big hands-on at the end, and everybody really gets to learn. It's important for people at the house to know how to use a fire extinguisher. And you'd be surprised at how many people have never pulled the pin and squeezed a handle on a fire extinguisher.
So folks were learning things that they could do in their homes, actually, to take care of themselves at any time of the year, not just after a storm, but just that kind of knowledge to be able to take care of yourself.
And that's exactly right. We teach you how to turn the power off in your house, how to turn the water off, how to turn the gas off. But what we want people to do in CERT is secure your house, and then go out and help secure your neighbor's house and expand your circle. And if we got enough people on the island, the circles will start overlapping, and we know where our residents are who would need help. We can get everybody taken care of. And this is in the first 12 hours. This is in the first 24 hours when we still don't have response teams, be it Red Cross, Baptist Men, or even fire or rescue people from other parts of the state coming in. This is immediately after. So we train our people to take care of themselves and then expand their circle. That's part of it. Actually responding after an event is part of it too. You don't have to respond after an event to take the training. We encourage everyone to. But if you want to respond, then we'll put you on the list. And when we have something, we let everybody know, hey, we need 25 people here tomorrow. Please show up if you can. Okay. And we've had good response.
Okay. So tell me about the damage assessment that the CERT team did in Rodanthe after, did you say Hurricane Arthur?
Yes, ma'am. They broke up in teams of 2. I think we had 4 teams every day. They went down every street and knocked on every door. If the people were home, if it was a rental house, it was noted. If there was people home, it was noted. How many people are in the house? What kind of damage they had? Did they flood? Have they lost their food? Do they have power? And there's a whole form that we fill out for every house. Was the floor damaged? Was the roof damaged? Did a tree fall on the house? And then we take that information and we move it to a form for the Baptist men. Now, when the Baptist men come in, they usually take a week or 10 days and go do the damage assessment. When they got there after Arthur, our team already had more than enough done for them to go straight to work.
Fantastic.
So instead of them having to send, 4 teams out doing this, and they were ready to go. So and we've got our form close enough to theirs where it'll merge, and we're trying to even improve that now. And it's a couple different relief agencies have different forms, and we're trying to figure out how we can do one form and merge into each one of theirs, so when they come, they can hit the ground running.
That's fantastic. And I would imagine it probably helps also to have local folks doing that initial assessment, just because of the logistics of where people live on this island oftentimes isn't clear to folks who don't live here.
Yes, ma'am.
So, all the back roads in a community when you live here. So, did it cost money to organize the CERT program?
There has been some expense. We got support from the majority of the fire departments, some financial support from them. We asked each department for $500. The Outer Banks Community Foundation has been quite helpful. We put in a request for a generator and a trailer and a couple other things, and they took care of the majority of that for us. since Hurricane Matthew's come about, we've seen need for another trailer, and we've actually got a request in now for a second trailer.
Well, what do you use the trailers for?
We want one trailer set up so we can go assist with command and feed people. So we want to keep our coffee pots and our knives and fork sets and paper cups. But we want another one where we can keep the generator so the gas isn't in with the cooking stuff. And we have rakes, shovels, wheelbarrows, hard hats. We've kind of got two different flavors for trailers right now. We've got one that's more long handle tools, generators and such, and then another one set up for command control and for helping to feed people.
And was CERT active after Matthew?
CERT was very active after Matthew. Initially, we went to the Hatteras Fire Department and fed lunch to the volunteers, and I think that was Tuesday. I believe that was Tuesday after the storm.
That storm was on Sunday, I guess.
Yeah, it was Tuesday. And then, so we fed 253 people, I think, lunch that day.
Wow.
With all donated groceries. Between Food Lion, Connors, different restaurants, all the food was donated. So we cooked it up and we served it. And the Salvation Army came in and they had the feeding part under control. So we went to Frisco and to Hatteras and started assisting with recovery supplies. Pallet full of tarps is here. A pallet full of cleanup kits is here. We were pretty much shipping and receiving. And we set up at Buxton, Frisco, and Hatteras fire departments and took requests for help and also handed out. After about day 3, the Dare County Social Services crew showed up, and I must tell you, every one of those people are superstars. They did a tremendous job. They actually did the majority of the damage assessment, and they assisted in allocating resources. They prioritized people, who really needed the most help initially, and they're still on the job. And this is 4 weeks later. Yeah. And they're still on the job, and just rock stars, every one of them. We're blessed to have that crowd.
So, are there other CERT teams in coastal North Carolina?
There's many across the state. I think maybe down in Wrightsville there may be one. I'm not real sure. We kind of are by ourselves out here. We don't have a lot of neighboring counties and communities, to really share with. I know in the middle part of the state and out in the mountains there's a lot of CERTs.
Probably for the same reason why we have one, an area that might be hard for folks to get to immediately following the storm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because we've seen it here where, somebody could have been in Manio really wanting to get here to help, but had to wait until they got the emergency ferry running or the road reopened.
So right now we can muster 45 or 50 people. And we do know that it changes. If the roads close, it changes. And if the power's on, it changes. When the power's out and the roads close, we have more volunteers because their businesses aren't open. The school, there's a lot more. But like after Arthur, we only had 8 or 10 or 12 people a day because everybody was back to work down here.
Right. Okay.
So we have to keep that in mind also.
Yeah, it seems, there's, I guess, challenges when one part of the island is directly impacted by a storm and other areas aren't. I mean, that's beneficial, but it also, like you said, probably makes it a little bit more complicated for volunteers. If they're required to go to work, they can't volunteer. Another question, your general assessment of Hatteras Island, our 7 villages, and how well prepared they are for natural disasters and storms. What would you say? What are we pretty well prepared? Are there things we could do better?
We learn a whole lot after each event. And it seems like if you go many years between events, you lose a lot of the knowledge, whether the people who did it last time aren't here anymore, or we forget, or we become lackadaisical even.
Right.
But the fire departments really have a lot of experience, and we seem to be getting more experience. Not real happy about that. Wish we could go without getting that experience. But we know now, before the storm comes, that we're going to need 100 tarps. We're going to need 250 cleanup kits. We're going to need 150 gallons of bleach. We already know this beforehand, and it's quite helpful. Just like after Irene, it took me 3-4 days to figure I need a dumpster. After Matthew, day one, I said, we need a dumpster, before we had a big pile of trash. Those kind of things we learn, and it sticks with us. So, yeah, we're definitely better at it now, and we seem to improve every time, and we're as prepared as we can be.
And finally, the volunteer fire departments on the island, how are they set for volunteers?
Nationwide volunteerism is down, and it's down tremendously, and it definitely affects the fire departments and rescue squads also. So there's members out there working, but they can always use more. And I would encourage you that if you want to participate, is to contact your local fire department and show up on a training night. It would be Mondays for everybody Frisco North and Tuesdays in Hatteras, and go talk to the fire chief. You don't necessarily have to go in a burning building to be a member of the fire department. There's other positions. If some people just aren't capable to do that, be it strength, age, whatever, but there's other things to do. Somebody needs to feed the people after the storm. There's other things. Okay. So I would definitely encourage anyone looking to participate to contact their local fire department.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Kenny. This has been fantastic, very informative, and I think I can speak for everybody here in saying we certainly appreciate everything that you and our other volunteer fire department members do, not just during and after a storm, but year-round. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. Tune in next week as we continue learning, sharing, and remembering together. If you'd like to hear more, check out our previous episodes where you get your podcasts. If you or someone you know is interested in being on The Landing, please reach out through the link in the description. Until then, stay safe and be kind.